The police officer was writing a single data ticket when she said, "If you weren't married, I'd add my number too." The flashing red and blue lights reflected across the windshield as Daniel Carter pulled his aging pickup truck to the side of the road. His hands tightened around the steering wheel while his 7-year-old daughter slept in the passenger seat, her small head resting against a worn pink backpack. The speedometer still hovered in his mind. He had been driving too fast. Not because he was reckless, but because life had been pushing him faster than he could keep up. As the police officer approached his window with a ticket book in hand, Daniel expected another problem he couldn't afford. What he didn't expect was a moment that would change the course of his life forever. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that restore faith in humanity, please like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Kindness Love Stories for more heartwarming stories. Daniel had never imagined his life would look like this. 3 years earlier, he had been a happy husband and proud father living in a modest home filled with laughter. Then tragedy struck without warning. His wife, Emily, passed away after a sudden illness that progressed far too quickly. One day she was helping their daughter with homework, and a few months later she was gone. The silence she left behind echoed through every room of their house. The grief nearly broke Daniel. Yet every morning, he forced himself out of bed because his daughter, Sophie, still needed breakfast, clean clothes, school rides, bedtime stories, and a father who could somehow stay strong while his own heart was falling apart. He worked long hours as a mechanic, often taking extra shifts just to keep up with bills. There were nights when he sat alone at the kitchen table staring at overdue notices, wondering how much longer he could hold everything together. That particular afternoon had already been difficult. Sophie had called him from school feeling sick. Daniel left work early to pick her up, sacrificing hours he desperately needed. After stopping at a pharmacy and then rushing to make it to a parent-teacher meeting, he found himself speeding down a quiet road, overwhelmed by stress and exhaustion. The officer who approached his truck introduced herself as Officer Sarah Mitchell. She looked professional and calm, but Daniel could already feel the weight of another expense settling onto his shoulders. While she reviewed his license and registration, she noticed Sophie sleeping beside him. Something in Sarah's expression softened. She returned to her patrol car, completed her paperwork, and came back a few minutes later. Daniel braced himself for the citation. As she handed over the ticket, her eyes lingered on a framed photograph attached to his dashboard. It showed Daniel, Emily, and Sophie during happier times. Sarah asked a few simple questions. Daniel answered honestly. He spoke quietly about losing his wife and raising Sophie alone. He didn't share the details for sympathy. He was simply too tired to hide the truth anymore. For a moment, Sarah stood silently beside the truck. Then she smiled gently and said something unexpected. If he weren't still wearing a wedding ring and carrying such obvious devotion to the woman he had lost, she joked that she might have added her number to the ticket too. It was the first time Daniel had laughed in months. The comment wasn't flirtatious in a dramatic movie-like way. It was human. Warm. Kind. For the first time in years, someone had looked beyond his mistakes and seen the men struggling underneath. After that day, Daniel assumed he would never see Sarah again. But fate had other plans. A few weeks later, Sophie's school organized a community safety event. Sarah happened to be there representing the police department. Sophie immediately recognized her and ran over excitedly. To Daniel's surprise, Sarah remembered both of them. What began as a brief conversation slowly turned into a friendship. Sarah learned about the challenges Daniel faced every day. She saw how hard he worked and how deeply he loved his daughter. Daniel, in turn, discovered that Sarah had her own struggles. She had spent years caring for her aging father while balancing a demanding career. She understood responsibility, sacrifice, and loneliness better than most people. Months passed. The friendship became a steady source of support. Sarah would occasionally attend Sophie's soccer games. Sometimes she checked in just to see how they were doing. Other times she simply listened when Daniel felt overwhelmed. For Sophie, Sarah became a trusted friend. For Daniel, she became something even more valuable, proof that life still held possibilities he had stopped believing in. Yet Daniel wrestled with guilt. Loving Emily had become part of his identity. Moving forward felt like leaving her behind. One evening, while sorting through old photo albums, Sophie sat beside him and pointed to a picture of her mother. Then she said something that stopped him cold. She told him that Mommy would want them to be happy. The words came from a child, but they carried the wisdom Daniel had been avoiding for years. That night, he realized healing was not betrayal. Remembering someone you love does not mean you must stop living. Gradually, Daniel allowed himself to embrace the future without letting go of the past. His friendship with Sarah deepened naturally. There were no dramatic declarations. No grand romantic gestures. Just two people who had been through pain and found comfort in each other's presence. The men who once believed his best days were behind him began smiling again. Sophie laughed more. Their home felt warmer. The heavy sadness that had filled every corner slowly gave way to hope. Years later, Daniel often reflected on that traffic stop. A ticket he couldn't afford had led to a friendship he desperately needed. A simple act of kindness had arrived at exactly the right moment. And a police officer who could have treated him as just another driver on the side of the road chose instead to see a human being carrying invisible burdens. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, leave a comment, share it with friends and family, and subscribe to Kindness Love Stories. Your support helps spread stories of hope and kindness to people who may need them most. Special request, before the ending, please comment with one word, hope, if you believe a single act of kindness can change someone's life forever. Daniel eventually learned that healing does not happen all at once. It arrives through small moments. A stranger's compassion. A child's wisdom. A second chance you never expected. Sometimes the road ahead changes because someone takes a few extra seconds to care. And sometimes, what begins as a ticket on the side of the road becomes the reminder that even after the darkest chapters, life still has beautiful pages left to write.